What's going on YouTube? iYogurt back with another Destiny video. This week, Bungie brought back Grandmaster Nightfalls in Season of Plunder, and along with it, they brought back the Adept D.F.A and Double Loot. Unfortunately, though, the strike this week is Glassway, which is considered one of the harder GMs in the game. Fear not, as with this guide, I'll give you and your fire team the tools you'll need to not only get the clears, but make them as fast as possible to help you get the loot and the rolls you want. Starting off with the basics, we're going to be up against Barrier and Overload champions. We'll also be against all three elemental shield types, and there's a Void Burn active. With that in mind, for weapons, Arbalist, Lemon Arc, and Divinity jump out as exotics of choice. To supplement that, Scouts, Auto Rifles, and Sniper Rifles will help break barrier shields, while legendary Void Bows will stun those annoying Overload champs. For our heavy spot, I'm going to recommend Void Linear Fusion Rifles like the Taipan or the Threaded Needle for 2 members, and at least 1 Void Rocket Launcher, which we'll talk about why here in a little bit. For our Warlocks, you all have 2 great options for this strike. The first, more defensive one, being Shadebinder and their Stasis Turrets. The exotic is going to be Ozymancy Gloves, so that we'll have 2 charges of our Cold Snap Grenades, which we'll be turning into their Stasis Turrets. For the subclass setup itself, we're going to be on Healing Rift and Cold Snap Grenade. Aspects are going to be Glacial Harvest and, of course, Bleak Watchers. Then Whisper of Durance, Change, Conduction, and Torment for our fragments. And lastly, on our armor, we're going to want Elemental Shards, Elemental Charge, and 3 stacks of Firepower to give us tons of grenade energy back and make sure that we have a turret whenever our team needs it. If you're a bit more confident, then Solar Warlock and the Starfire Protocol are going to be the play. Again, starting at the subclass layout, we're going to be rocking Empowering Rift, Celestial Fire, Melee, and we're going to be using Fusion Grenades. The main aspect is going to be Touch of Flame, causing our Fusion Nades to explode twice, and for the second one, I like Icarus Dash for the movement, but this one is more preference. Next, our fragments are going to be Ember of Torches to make us and our allies radiant, Solace to extend that radiance, then Char and Eruption to make our Fusion Grenades ignite bigger targets and spread Scorch when they do. Our mods here are going to be a little bit more flexible, but Ashes to Assets on Solar Helmet is almost a must. This mod pretty much gives us Phoenix Protocol like super regen while still giving us the benefits of the Starfire Protocol. Lastly, if you're running this, I'm going to heavily recommend you have on Lamar, as the tick damage will help generate our nade energy similar to the Witherhoard combo. For our Hunter friends, I'm going to recommend Night Stalker subclass so we can abuse the Invis and get off our Aeon finishers and teammates revives for free. For our subclass abilities, the only recommendation I have is Gambler's Dodge to help us keep our smoke bombs up more often. This leads us into our aspects. First up is Trapper's Ambush, so our smoke bombs make friendlies invis, and Vanishing Step to lean into that invisibility even more. Fragments here are going to be Echo of Starvation and Obscurity for some survivability, and Echo of Leeching mostly for the stat bump. Mods are again going to be flexible here, but having a way to make Orbs of Power and things that give us back our melee are going to be big. Titans. You guys have probably the best and easiest build to pull off. Put on Storm Grenades and Heart of Inmost Light. That's it. No, but seriously though, that alone would be good enough, but there are ways we can make it even better. Back at the top with the subclass, we're going to have on the Thunder Crash Super, the new Thruster class ability, and the star of the show, Storm Grenades. Touch of Thunder aspect is going to cause our grenades to create a thunder cloud that tracks to enemies, while Knockout is going to be used to give us extra aspect slots. For those aspects, we're going to be using Spark of Shock to jolt targets and Ions to get traces once they're defeated. Spark of Magnitude is going to extend the duration of our nades. And finally, Spark of Resistance is nice for some extra damage resist. Tips for the strike itself. The most challenging part of the strike is the boss room by a mile. Until then, stay back and use your long-range weapons and abilities to clear out the adds so that you can deal with larger targets such as champions and the occasional mini-boss. Be sure as you're going through to get Aeon finishers as your team needs them. At some point, you'll come to an area where you need to stand on a plate to drain Vex Milk from the arena. Here it's important to know that standing on the plate is what triggers enemy spawning and only one person needs to stand on the plate at a time to progress it. So my recommendation is have one person run up, stand on the plate until ads spawn, at which point you should retreat back to your teammates who should be taking cover at the back of the room. From this cover, clear the room out, stand on the plate again until the next wave spawns, and repeat this until you hit 100% progress. Afterwards, kill everything on your way to the opposite side of the room and head into the boss room. Once in the boss room, you'll first encounter an overload champion and some dregs. Once all of these are dead, the big boss and little boss, as I'll be calling him, will spawn in along with a wave of miners and some champions. Hide from the main structure immediately to the left when facing the large Vex portal. Use the natural choke points of the structure to AoE enemies down while focusing larger targets such as champions and the little boss who can and will push inside the structure. Everyone should be using nades, using supers, and heavy as needed to make sure you don't get overwhelmed here. It is really easy at this point for one person going down to turn into a wipe screen, sending your fire team back to orbit. It's important to note that once the little boss gets down to 2/3 health, he'll teleport away. After you face the little boss and deal with the champs, take turns kiting the big boss, damaging him with anti-barrier weapons and nades as you can. After, there are 2 phases where big boss and little boss will be taking turns teleporting in, bringing with them more ads, champions, and the occasional wyvern. The wyverns are why I recommend one person bring a rocket, especially if you opt to not bring divinity, as they don't have an easily accessible crit spot from the front. After both the bosses take their turn, they'll team back up in the final phase to try and deny you of your loot one last time. Deal with them as you have a couple of times already, focusing the little boss and champions down before finishing the big boy. It's really important in this last phase to kill all 4 of the barrier champions before killing the big boss, as missing even one of them will result in not getting the platinum ranks, and therefore you won't get any rewards. If you're able to complete this strike, you're well on your way to getting that Conquer title while also having your pockets lined with some freshly obtained loot. This guide helped you. Be sure to like and subscribe, as this helps me and make sure you'll see when I post other guides and videos. Be sure to come back next week as we tackle yet another strike in the Light Blade. I'll see you there.